Trivium is a band that whenever they first came out experienced some immediate success, and because of that, there are a lot of metal fans out there that just absolutely love to hate this band. Why are you looking at me? Don't look at me. I've just been talking about the music over the course of the past couple of albums and how I've not exactly found it to be all of that stimulating. I really think the band's going through a bit of an identity crisis, though they probably disagree. But there have been many other reasons that folks have decided to dream up as to why they dislike Trivium. And so today we're going to take a look at a couple of those and see just how ridiculous they can get. Here are 5 reasons why people hate the band Trivium. And we, of course, are going to start our journey with number 5. Now, number 5 in this case is that their live shows are inconsistent. Now, this is one that I see a little bit less often than most of the others. However, there have been many that have seen the band live that state that there's not a lot of replication. And typically in those situations, I discount a lot of those, considering replication between a studio album that has been kind of beautifully factored and practiced and redone hundreds of times for some situations is not exactly the easiest thing to do live on a night-to-night basis. Some of the main complaints have been cracking in voices and bad guitar tone. But it's something that I see more often than not, which almost leads me to believe that there's a little bit of magic that is going on in the studio. That way everything sounds top shop. Overall, this is something that I think is kind of silly. I think that you really shouldn't complain too much about. If they just gave a really bad show, then it's possible that you could see them again, and they could give a really good show. Great example of that for me was Disturbed, considering the first time I saw them, they sucked balls, and then I saw them a couple of years later after that, and they still weren't exactly great, but they didn't suck balls. So, Trivium is a band I've never had the pleasure of seeing live, by the way, at least not to my recollection, and if I did, it was probably during the middle portion of the 2000s, and maybe at an Ozfest. I don't know. Number 4, their early work is Metallica ripoff Come to Life. This is one that we definitely saw whenever the band was first getting its rise, and still whenever there are folks that are aiming to defend their view of disliking this band, they still continue to bring this up. It's a way in which these individuals are able to discount the early material in Trivium's discography, stating that they essentially took the ideas or took some of their inspiration from a band such as Metallica, either that or even Iron Maiden, and just slap it together into a brand new product in order to sort of make a little bit of an image or a name off of a previously successful band. Basically what they're trying to say with this is that band doesn't have a true identity of its own. They're not forging something that's completely different. And of course, the tone of that changed a little bit whenever Shogun came out, and ever since then, they've kind of gone back to a little bit of the Metallica-isms. So it's something that's just ever present from their sound. It's something that they just were truly inspired by that group. But this is still something that you're going to see oftentimes used as a way to defame the band, stating that their sound is slightly derivative based off of this. They're extremely bland, and that this actually causes the group to be a little bit boring. Either way, it's more of an opinion. It's not totally objective. There's definitely some outside influences that certainly cause that to be, reality to these folks. Number 3, their association with the metalcore movement, which is, by the way, just flat out wrong. I mean, people will consider these guys to be a metalcore band considering their association with some of the other groups. Some of the other groups that have a lot of popularity and tend to be listened to by the same individuals within the metal community. That's right. Once again, we're going back to that old idea of old school fan versus new school fan. In the first part of the 2000s, Trivium was rising up from the ashes with bands such as Slipknot and Disturbed and others, and the immediate nature of their popularity caused a lot of folks to really be dissensive toward these guys, to really have a poor view, considering them to be maybe the best out of that fold, but still a part of the fold, which means they are still just as guilty. You're guilty until you're proven innocent, and in this case, and with these folks, the band will never be proven innocent, and they'll never be able to break free from those ties. This is kind of ludicrous, considering whenever you say that their early work is a Metallica ripoff, that doesn't exactly scream metalcore. And whenever you listen to the way in which their work really kind of couples together, it's one that really has the infusion point of more of a modern metal. This is something where the band is willing to kind of explore their grounds a little bit more on that earlier material, perhaps a little bit more than you've seen recently, but either way, this association with the metalcore movement is really just a falsity. It's really an association with bands that are associated with the metalcore movement, the modern metal movement, or just associated with other bands that these folks hate. It's really stupid. Number 2, and this one's even dumber, they've become popular. Yeah, this is one that actually could be said for a lot of the groups that have been mentioned on this series, most of which have had some element or some degree of success. The fact that the groups have become popular has kind of risen that potential that there's going to be those that hate them. And then there are those that are underground junkies that basically believe that if you rise above the underground and become commercialized in some way, that you've automatically become a bad band, regardless of material. Either way, this is a really silly argument, and it's one that I see way more often than you might expect. Really, this is something that I see a lot whenever it comes to comments on videos, especially whenever it comes to speaking about the band. Those that are kind of piss poor toward my overall assessment will defend the band with, whole hearts, but those that sort of, I guess, agree with it, some of them are just agreeing blindly because the band has become a popular group. Here's a little newsflash for a lot of folks. Trivium was always a popular group. Even whenever their first album came out, they were rising in success as that was continuing. And with their second and third releases, they were able to go over the top. Really, whenever you got to the Crusade, they were already being played in stores such as Spencer Gifts or Hot Topic. They were already being touted as not the next big thing, but as the thing that was here that was pretty big. So they were always a little bit popular. What's next? Well, the one that probably makes the most sense. The only one with this list that I actually kind of agree with. And that's number one, and that's that their Post-Shogun material sucks. Now, a long time ago, I did a review of Shogun and was not exactly very favorable toward the album that most people consider to be the pinnacle of Trivium's work. And this is something that still has not really changed within my mind. I'm just not somebody that feels that Shogun is them at their peak. In fact, I find a couple of the songs to be mindlessly long for no reason. However, if we would have known that what was to come after Shogun was going to be not only the inability to come anywhere close to that album, but the fact that it was actually going to regress and tread even down further into the gallows of really obscurity, of metal hell, if you really want to call it, is definitely something that nobody saw coming. Think about Icarus and think about that story about flying too close to the sun. With Shogun, it was almost like Icarus being right at that perfect location, where his wings were not quite melted, but they were starting to melt a little bit. And you saw the band perhaps still shimmering in the overall wind that surrounds. With everything ever since then, it's been something where they have flown too close to the sun. They've tried to do this or return to that, either that or have decided to take the sound a little bit more simple and hire folks such as David Draymond to help out with production work. And whatever has really happened, it's kind of a shame, considering this group does possess a grandiose amount of talent. Could part of the reason actually be that their sound has started to feel dated a little bit, that they've not had nearly enough, folks sort of follow them along this movement that have done anything of real worth? Is the scene itself one that has sort of fallen victim to stagnation? Either way, the Post-Shogun material has definitely drawn the ire of many individuals. Now, for those that are first getting into the group, they tend to really enjoy the work, but then once they explore the previous works of the past, those new, more recent albums hold more of a sentimental value as opposed to a true love value. But either way, wow. If you think about everything before Shogun, wow, what a true, showcase that this band could have potentially become. And ever since then, they feel a bit derivative. They do feel a bit stale. They do feel tremendously stagnant. And they also feel like they're completely and 100% out to dry, with nobody to help them really sort of rise through based off of the idea that other groups are doing things a lot better. I'm not saying that modern metal has started to really enter into an age where everything's starting to sound the same, but we're getting to the point where it's no longer surprising. It's no longer shocking. It's now something that is a sound that is easily recognizable. And once you get to that point, you need to start changing things up. But there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, 5 reasons why people dislike, distaste, or have disdain for the band Trivium. One of those 3 did not actually make a lick of sense at all. If you think there's another band that needs to be roasted, toasted, and burnt to a crisp by this series, leave your suggestion in the comments below. I'm coverkillernation, and I will talk to each and every one of you guys next time. Take care.